The mining platform Prometheus 7 shuddered as another drill bit snapped against the alien metal, buried deep within asteroid KX-2847. Chief Engineer Marcus, Chen wiped sweat from his brow and cursed under his breath. 3 months into this mining operation, and they had barely scratched the surface of whatever lay beneath the asteroid's rocky exterior. "Sir, you need to see this," called out Technician Riley from across the cramped excavation chamber. Her voice carried an unusual tremor that made Marcus look up from his diagnostic tablet. The drill had finally broken through into what appeared to be a massive, hollow chamber. As the dust settled, emergency lighting revealed something that shouldn't exist. Smooth, impossibly intricate crystalline walls that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The craftsmanship was beyond anything humans had ever encountered, even surpassing the advanced technology of the Galactic Council species. Marcus approached the breach carefully, his boots crunching on scattered debris. The air that escaped from the chamber carried a strange electric taste that made his teeth ache. Through the opening, he could see the chamber extended far beyond their lights could reach, disappearing into darkness that seemed almost alive. "Get me a full atmospheric reading," Marcus ordered, though his eyes were already drawn to something else. Deep within the chamber, barely visible in the dancing shadows, was a shape too large and too perfect to be natural. It looked almost like breathable atmosphere, sir, Riley reported, her scanner beeping rapidly. Oxygen levels actually higher than ship standard. Temperature stable at 22 degrees Celsius. "But sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures from whatever's down there." Marcus activated his comm unit. "Captain Zhang, we found something. You need to get down here immediately." Captain Sarah Zhang arrived within minutes, accompanied by Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's xenoarchaeologist. The three of them stood at the edge of the breach, staring into the alien chamber that defied everything they knew about asteroid composition. "That's not natural formation," Dr. Vasquez whispered, her scientific training warring with simple amazement. The precision of those crystal formations. "It's like looking at a cathedral built by beings who understood physics on a level we can't even imagine." They rappelled down into the chamber, their lights casting wild shadows on the crystalline walls. The space was enormous, easily the size of a city block and stretching up into darkness above them. But it was what lay at the center that made them all freeze in stunned silence, suspended. In the middle of the chamber, by chains of the same alien metal they had been drilling through, was a creature that belonged in legends, not reality. The dragon, for there was no other word that could describe it, was easily 40 meters long from snout to tail. Its scales were deep black with veins of silver that caught their lights like captured starlight. Massive wings were folded against its body, and its head hung forward as if in eternal sleep. The chains that bound it were works of art in themselves, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Energy coursed through them in slow hypnotic pulses, and Marcus realized with growing horror that the creature was still alive. Its chest rose and fell with the slow rhythm of deep hibernation. "My God," Captain Zhang breathed. "How long has it been here?" Dr. Vasquez was already running scans, her equipment going crazy with readings. "The metal composition of those chains, it's not showing up in any of our databases, and the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever technology created this prison, it's far beyond anything the Galactic Council has ever developed." Marcus found himself drawn closer to the sleeping giant. As he approached, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Scars. Terrible scars crisscrossed the dragon's hide, some old and faded, others looking disturbingly recent. Burn marks from energy weapons, deep gouges that could only have come from torture. "These aren't restraints," Marcus said quietly, his voice barely carrying in the vast chamber. "This is a prison. Someone has been keeping this creature here for who knows how long." As if responding to his words, one of the dragon's eyes cracked open. It was a brilliant gold, ancient and intelligent and filled with pain that struck Marcus like a physical blow. The eye focused on him with startling clarity, and for a moment, engineer and dragon regarded each other across the impossible gulf between their species. Then the eye closed again, and the creature returned to its unnatural sleep. "We need to get back to the ship," Captain Zhang ordered. "This is beyond our mission parameters. Command needs to know about this immediately." But Marcus lingered, staring up at the chained dragon. Something in that brief moment of eye contact had changed everything. He had seen intelligence there and suffering, and something else. a spark of hope that terrified him more than anything else in this alien tomb. As they climbed back up to the mining platform, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they had just made a discovery that would change everything, not just for their mission, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. The question was whether that change would save them all or destroy them. Back in the chamber below, the dragon's eye opened once more, watching their retreating lights with an expression that might have been curiosity. For the first time in 300 years, something new had entered its prison, something that smelled of hope and determination and the peculiar chemical signature of a species that refused to accept the impossible. The chains pulsed brighter, as if sensing the stirring of their prisoner's interest. But deep in the dragon's ancient mind, gears that had been motionless for centuries began to turn once more. The emergency transmission reached Earth Fleet Command in just over 6 hours, carried by the fastest quantum relay buoy in the mining fleet's possession. Marcus watched Captain Zhang pace the bridge like a caged animal while they waited for a response. The weight of their discovery pressed down on everyone aboard the Prometheus 7 like a physical force. 37 species in the Galactic Council, Dr. Vasquez muttered for the dozenth time, reviewing her scans on the main display. Not one of them has technology that reads like this. The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases. Marcus had spent the last 4 hours running every diagnostic he could think of on the alien restraint system. The more he learned, the more disturbed he became. The chains weren't just holding the dragon, they were actively draining it, siphoning away its life force with surgical precision, keeping it alive but weak. "It's dying," he said suddenly, breaking the tense silence on the bridge. "Slowly, but it's dying. Whatever those chains are doing, they're not sustainable indefinitely." Captain Zhang stopped pacing. "How can you tell?" "The energy readings are fluctuating, getting weaker. I think the system has been running for so long that it's starting to fail." Marcus pulled up his analysis on the secondary screen. "Based on the decay patterns, I'd estimate it has maybe 6 months before total system failure." "And then what happens?" Dr. Vasquez asked, though her expression suggested she already suspected the answer. "Then it dies. After surviving however many centuries in that prison, it dies alone in the dark." The comm system crackled to life, Admiral Morrison's voice cutting through the tension. "Prometheus 7, this is Fleet Command. Your discovery has been classified at the highest levels. You are to maintain position and await the arrival of a full diplomatic team. ETA 72 hours. Diplomatic team?" Captain Zhang frowned. "Admiral, with respect, this isn't a diplomatic situation. This is a prisoner of unknown origin being held by technology we don't understand." "Negative, Captain. Initial analysis suggests this creature may be of significant strategic importance. The technology alone could revolutionize our understanding of energy manipulation. You will take no action regarding the subject until the team arrives." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Strategic importance. They were already thinking of the dragon as a resource to be exploited, just like whoever had chained it in the first place. After the transmission ended, the bridge fell into uncomfortable silence. Marcus excused himself and made his way back to the excavation chamber. He told himself he was just running additional scans, but the truth was more complicated. That moment of eye contact with the dragon had affected him in ways he couldn't explain. The chamber felt different now. The crystalline walls seemed to pulse with more urgency, and the air carried an almost electric tension. Marcus set up his equipment and began a detailed scan of the restraint system, looking for any weakness in its design. Hours passed. Marcus became so absorbed in his work that he didn't notice the subtle change in the lighting until a voice spoke directly into his mind. "You return." Marcus spun around, his heart hammering. The dragon's eyes were open, both of them now, watching him with that same ancient intelligence he had glimpsed before. The voice in his head was neither male nor female, but carried the weight of centuries. "You can hear me," the dragon observed, and there was surprise in the mental voice. "Interesting, your species is more adaptable than expected." "You're telepathic," Marcus managed to say aloud. "Among other things. You are studying my bonds." Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. The dragon's presence in his mind was overwhelming, like standing next to a star and trying to comprehend its scale. "They call me Nixtharian. I was guardian of the 7th gate before." The mental voice trailed off, carrying undertones of loss so profound that Marcus staggered under the emotional weight. "Before I was betrayed, who did this to you?" Images flooded Marcus's mind. A war that raged across star systems. A species called the Vorash, masters of technology and cruelty in equal measure. The Galactic Council, younger then and desperate, making deals with devils to save themselves. And Nyxtharion, the last of his kind, betrayed by those he had sworn to protect. The Vorash demanded a price for their aid against the Void Swarm. They wanted the Guardian bloodline eliminated. The Council agreed. The Galactic Council did this? Marcus felt sick. They're still in power. They're the ones who govern most of the galaxy. Indeed. And now you understand why your arrival is problematic. Your species is new to this galaxy. You do not yet know the true nature of those you seek to join. Marcus stared up at the chained dragon, his mind reeling. Everything humanity thought they knew about galactic politics was built on a lie. They were trying to join a council that had committed genocide. There is something else, Nyxtharion continued. The bonds that hold me are failing. I can feel them weakening with each passing day. When they fail completely, you'll die, perhaps. Or perhaps something far worse. The Vorash technology was not designed merely to imprison. It was designed to corrupt. When these chains finally break, what emerges may not be the Guardian who was bound here. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. A creature of this power, driven mad by centuries of torture and corruption, breaking free in the heart of galactic civilization. The death toll would be unimaginable. But there is another way, Nyxtharion said softly. Your species has something mine once possessed. The ability to see beyond what is to what could be. The chains can be broken safely, but only by one who understands both mercy and strength. Me, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. You. But know this, freeing me will mark your species as enemies of the Galactic Council. The Vorash will come for you. Everything you thought you knew about your place in this galaxy will change. Marcus thought about the diplomatic team on its way, ready to turn this discovery into another tool of exploitation. He thought about the lies humanity was being fed about their new galactic neighbors, and he thought about the ancient being before him, dying alone after centuries of unimaginable suffering. Tell me what I need to do. The dragon's eyes brightened, and for the first time in 300 years, Nyxtharion allowed himself to hope. Marcus worked through the night, his hands steady despite the magnitude of what he was attempting. Nyxtharion had shown him the weak points in the ancient restraint system, places where human engineering principles could exploit flaws that even the Vorash hadn't anticipated. The dragon's knowledge combined with human innovation created possibilities that neither could achieve alone. The resonance frequency needs to be exact. Nyxtharion's voice whispered in Marcus's mind. Too high and the chains will simply adapt. Too low, and they will trigger the corruption protocols. Marcus fine-tuned his makeshift equipment, cobbled together from mining tools and salvaged electronics. It wasn't pretty, but it would work. He hoped. What happens when you're free? Marcus asked as he worked. The galaxy thinks your kind is extinct. They are not wrong. I am the last. When the Vorash came for us, they were thorough. My mate, my children, my entire flight, all dead. I survived only because the Council needed one of us alive for their bargain. The pain in that mental voice was staggering. Marcus had to stop working for a moment, overwhelmed by the weight of the dragon's loss. But death is not the end for Guardians, Nyxtharion continued. We are bound to something greater than ourselves. Even in chains I could feel them, the Void Swarm stirring again in the dark spaces between galaxies. The galaxy will need a Guardian again soon. The Void Swarm, what exactly are they? Images flooded Marcus's mind. A nightmare of living darkness that consumed entire star systems, turning matter itself into pure entropy. Creatures that existed in the spaces between reality, feeding on the collapse of order into chaos. They come in cycles. Every 10,000 years they test the barriers between dimensions. Usually they find resistance and retreat. But if they ever find the galaxy weak, divided, Marcus understood. The galactic civilization that had betrayed Nyxtharion might soon need him to save them all. The irony was almost poetic. His equipment beeped softly. Ready. Last chance to change your mind, Marcus said. Once I start this, there's no going back for either of us. I have been waiting 3 centuries for someone with both the skill and the courage to try. I will not waste this chance. Marcus activated the resonance field. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The chains began to vibrate, their energy patterns fluctuating wildly. Ancient symbols flared with light, and somewhere deep in the asteroid, Massive machinery began to hum with increasing urgency. Alarms started blaring aboard the Prometheus 7. Marcus could hear running footsteps and shouted orders echoing down from the mining platform above. His comm unit crackled with Captain Zhang's voice. "Marcus, what the hell is happening down there? We're reading massive energy spikes." "Controlled demolition," Marcus replied, which was technically true. "Give me 10 more minutes." The chains were fighting back now, their Vorash programming trying to compensate for the resonance attack. But Marcus had expected this. He switched frequencies, following the pattern Nixtharian had taught him. Always staying one step ahead of the system's adaptations. "Almost there," Nixtharian said, and Marcus could feel the dragon's excitement building. "The primary restraints are weakening." One of the massive chains suddenly snapped with a sound like breaking thunder. Nixtharian's left wing unfurled partway, sending crystal fragments raining down from the chamber ceiling. The dragon's eyes blazed with golden fire. "More," Nixtharian urged. "The core restraints still hold." Marcus pushed his equipment harder, pouring every bit of power he could generate into the resonance field. Sparks flew from his improvised connections, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. But it was working. One by one, the ancient chains began to fail. The chamber shook as another restraint broke. Then another. Marcus found himself backing away as Nixtharian slowly began to rise, wings spreading to their full, magnificent span. The dragon was even larger than Marcus had thought, a living mountain of muscle and scale and ancient power. Captain Zhang's voice crackled through the comm again, more urgent now. "Marcus, the diplomatic team just arrived early. Admiral Morrison is demanding an immediate status report. And there's something else. Long-range scanners are picking up ships moving toward our position. Unknown configuration." Marcus felt ice in his veins. "How far out?" 6 hours, maybe less." "Marcus, what did you do down there?" The last chain snapped. Nixtharian rose to his full height, neck extending upward until his massive head nearly touched the chamber ceiling. The dragon's roar shook the entire asteroid, a sound of pure triumph that had not been heard in the galaxy for 300 years. But as the echoes faded, something unexpected happened. Instead of the rampage Marcus had feared, Nixtharian settled back onto his haunches and regarded the human with something that might have been gentle amusement. "You expected me to be consumed with rage." "The thought had occurred to me," Marcus admitted. "Rage is a luxury I cannot afford. The Vorash ships your friends detected are already moving to recapture me. They have had centuries to prepare for the possibility of my escape." Marcus felt the color drain from his face. "The Vorash are coming here?" "They never left. They have been watching, waiting. The moment my bonds failed, they would have detected it. Your species is about to face its first real test in galactic politics." As if summoned by the dragon's words, Captain Zhang's voice burst through the comm with barely controlled panic. "All hands to battle stations. Incoming fleet, 27 ships of unknown design. They're not responding to hails and they're moving fast." Nixtharian lowered his great head until he was looking directly at Marcus. "You freed me knowing the cost. Now I ask you, will you stand with me when the Vorash come to collect their property?" Marcus looked up at the ancient guardian, thinking of everything that had brought him to this moment. A routine mining operation that had become something far more significant. A discovery that would reshape humanity's understanding of the galaxy, and a choice that would define his species' future among the stars. "We stand together," Marcus said simply. The dragon's eyes blazed with approval. "Then let us see what your species is truly capable of. The first lesson in galactic politics is about to begin." Above them, the first energy blasts from Vorash ships began to impact the asteroid's surface, and Marcus realized that everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy was about to change forever. The Prometheus 7 shuddered under the first wave of Vorash weapons fire. Marcus felt the asteroid shake around him as energy beams carved through rock and metal like it was paper. The mining platform's defensive systems, designed to ward off pirates and claim jumpers, were laughably inadequate against military-grade alien technology. "All civilian personnel to emergency pods." Captain Zhang's voice echoed through the ship's comm system. "This is not a drill." But Marcus wasn't going anywhere. He stood in the chamber next to Nixtharian, watching the dragon's transformation with fascination and growing hope. The creature that had been weakened by centuries of imprisonment was rapidly regaining strength. The scales that had been dull and lifeless now gleamed with inner fire. and the massive wings spread wide seemed to pull energy from the air itself. "Your ship cannot withstand their assault much longer," Nixtharian observed, his mental voice calm despite the chaos above. "The Vorash are efficient killers. Can you help them?" "I can do more than that." The dragon's eyes blazed with something that might have been anticipation. "But first I need you to understand what you have unleashed. The Vorash are not merely another species seeking dominance. They are something far worse." Images flooded Marcus's mind again. The Vorash were not born of any natural world. They were the offspring of the Void Swarm from previous incursions, created when the entities of chaos found ways to anchor themselves partially in normal space. They retained the Void Swarm's hunger for destruction, but gained the ability to exist in the physical universe. "They serve as scouts and infiltrators," Nixtharian explained. "When the next great incursion comes, they will open the gates for their masters." The Galactic Council made a bargain with servants of entropy itself. Another massive impact shook the chamber. Emergency lighting flickered as power systems strained under the assault. "So what do? We remind the galaxy what Guardians were created for." Nixtharian moved with impossible grace for something so large, flowing toward the breach Marcus had originally cut in the chamber wall. But as the dragon approached, the opening began to expand on its own, crystal walls reshaping themselves to accommodate his passage. "The entire asteroid was once my ship," Nixtharian explained, sensing Marcus's amazement. "Living crystal, grown rather than built. The Vorash could imprison me, but they could not truly break the bond between Guardian and vessel. They emerged onto the asteroid's surface through an opening that hadn't existed moments before. The scene that greeted them was chaos. The small fleet of human ships was badly outmatched, their weapons barely scratching the organic-looking hulls of the Vorash vessels. Even as Marcus watched, one of the escort frigates exploded in a silent bloom of fire and debris. But the Vorash ships were focusing entirely on the human fleet. They hadn't noticed the massive form rising from the asteroid's surface. Nixtharian spread his wings wide and roared, not the triumphant cry from the chamber, but something else entirely. This was a sound that reached across dimensions, a challenge that every Vorash in the system would understand. The sound of a Guardian preparing for war. The effect was immediate. The Vorash ships wheeled away from their attack on the human fleet, turning toward the asteroid with single-minded focus. Marcus could see them clearly now. Vessels that looked more grown than built, with hulls that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. 27 ships, Nixtharian mused. "They are taking me seriously. Is that good or bad? For them, very bad." The dragon launched himself from the asteroid's surface with a grace that defied physics. There was no massive thrust, no visible propulsion system. Nixtharian simply decided to move, and the universe accommodated him. Marcus watched through the dragon's shared senses as Nixtharian approached the lead Vorash vessel. The ship's weapons opened fire, beams of twisted energy that could have vaporized a city block, but they struck the dragon's scales and simply vanished, absorbed into whatever force sustained Guardian physiology. Nixtharian landed on the ship's hull with delicate precision, his claws finding purchase on the organic surface. Then he began to sing. It wasn't audible to human ears, but Marcus felt it through their mental link. A song of unmaking, of order asserting itself over chaos. The Vorash ship began to come apart at the molecular level, its pseudo-living hull reverting to the base elements from which it had been formed. The other Vorash vessels converged on their position, weapons blazing. But something had changed in the way they moved. Where before they had flowed with predatory confidence, now there was something that looked almost like panic. "They remember now," Nixtharian said with grim satisfaction. "They remember why their masters feared us." What followed was less a battle than a demonstration. Nixtharian moved between the Vorash ships like a force of nature, his very presence causing their reality-warping technology to fail. Where Guardian touched Vorash creation, order triumphed over entropy. But as the last enemy ship came apart under Nixtharian's assault, the dragon's mental voice carried an urgent warning. This was only a scouting force. The fact that they moved so quickly means there are others nearby. Your species has just declared itself the enemy of beings who have been preparing for war for 3 centuries. Marcus felt the weight of that knowledge settle on his shoulders. In freeing Nixtharian, he had committed all of humanity to a conflict they barely understood. The dragon settled back onto the asteroid's surface, his massive form seeming to draw strength from contact with the living crystal. But you have also given them their greatest weapon against the coming darkness. The question now is whether your leaders are wise enough to use it. As if summoned by his words, Captain Zhang's voice crackled through Marcus's comm unit. Marcus, please tell me you're still alive down there. Because we've got incoming transmissions from 3 different galactic governments and none of them sound happy. Marcus looked up at Nixtharian, seeing his own worry reflected in those ancient golden eyes. The easy part, freeing the dragon, was over. Now came the hard part, convincing the galaxy that they had done the right thing. Welcome to galactic politics, Nixtharian said with something that might have been dark humor. Where truth is the first casualty and trust must be earned with blood. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in their recorded history. Representatives from 37 species filled the vast assembly chamber on Nexus Prime, their voices creating a cacophony of anger, fear, and confusion that echoed off the crystalline walls. Marcus stood in the center of it all, feeling very small and very human beside Nixtharian's massive form. The dragon had insisted on attending in person, despite the obvious security concerns. Or perhaps because of them. Let them see what they thought they had destroyed, Nixtharian had said during the journey to Nexus Prime. Let them face the consequences of their choices. Council Speaker Thrixal, a being of shifting liquid metal who served as the closest thing the council had to a permanent leader, called for order with little success. Finally, Nixtharian himself spoke, his voice carrying across dimensions in a way that demanded attention. I am Nixtharian, last guardian of the 7th gate. I address this council not as prisoner, but as witness to your crimes. The chamber fell silent. Many of the representatives had never seen a guardian even in historical records. They stared at Nixtharian with mixtures of awe and terror. Speaker Thrixale's form rippled with what Marcus had learned to recognize as distress. The Guardian Accords clearly state that your kind were betrayed by this very council 3 centuries ago, Nixtharian interrupted. Sold to the Vorash in exchange for temporary protection. From a threat you were too cowardly to face yourselves. A Zalani representative, her crystalline body chiming with agitation, stood to speak. You speak of ancient history. The Void Swarm was defeated. The galaxy has known peace for peace built on genocide, Marcus said, finally finding his voice. Peace built on lies. The human delegation sat behind him, their faces pale with the knowledge they had gained over the past week. Admiral Morrison had been furious when the full truth came out, but even he couldn't argue with the evidence Nixtharian had provided. Show them, Nixtharian said quietly in Marcus's mind. Marcus activated the holographic projector they had brought. The chamber filled with images from Nixtharian's memories, the true history of the Void Swarm incursions, the role of the Guardians, and most damning of all, recordings of the secret meetings where the Council had agreed to the Guardian genocide. The evidence was overwhelming. Speaker Thrixal's form began to collapse and reform rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. Other representatives sat in stunned silence as their carefully constructed version of history crumbled around them. This cannot be accurate, whispered the Andorian ambassador, her feathers ruffling with distress. Every memory is verified by quantum resonance patterns, Nixtharian replied. Your own technology can confirm their authenticity. You know the truth now. The question is what you will do with it. A new voice cut through the shocked murmur that had begun to fill the chamber. The same thing we did 300 years ago. Every head in the chamber turned toward the speaker. Ambassador Kethmore of the Vorash had risen from his seat in the observer section. His form was humanoid but wrong in ways that hurt to look at directly, as if he existed slightly out of phase with normal reality. The arrangements made 3 centuries ago served their purpose, Kethmore continued, his voice carrying harmonics that made Marcus's teeth ache. The galaxy was protected from the Void Swarm. Order was maintained. At the cost of an entire species, Marcus said, anger overriding his fear. Kethmore's attention turned to him with the weight of a falling star. A small price for stability, and one that will be paid again if necessary. The chamber erupted in chaos. Half the representatives seemed shocked by the Vorash admission, while others appeared to be calculating the political ramifications. Marcus realized with growing horror that some of them had known all along. Now you see the true nature of galactic civilization, Nixtharian observed privately. built on convenient compromises with evil. Speaker Thrixal was calling for order again, but his voice carried none of its former authority. The illusion of moral superiority that had held the council together was cracking. "The Guardian is dangerous," Kethamore continued, seemingly oblivious to the chaos around him. "It has already influenced this primitive species to violence. The infection must be contained." "Infection?" Captain Zhang, who had remained silent until now, stood up with barely controlled rage. "You're talking about genocide like it's pest control." "Necessary maintenance," Kethamore corrected. The void swarm stirs again. "We have detected signs of dimensional weakness in 3 sectors. When they come, we will be ready. As we were before." "Lies." Nixtharian's mental voice carried fury that made Marcus stagger. "You serve them. You always have." The dragon rose to his full height, wings spreading wide. The chamber's environmental systems struggled to accommodate the massive form as Nixtharian's voice echoed across dimensions. "You want to know why the void swarm continues to probe our reality? Why they grow stronger with each passing cycle? Because their servants have been preparing the way for them, breaking down the barriers that keep chaos at bay." Kethamore's form began to shift, becoming more angular, more wrong. "Enough! The Guardian will return to containment or—" He never finished the sentence. Nixtharian's roar shattered the illusion that had hidden Kethamore's true nature. The thing that stood in the Vorash ambassador's place was a writhing mass of shadows and displaced geometry. A piece of the void swarm wearing the pretense of civilized form. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Representatives scrambled for cover as Nixtharian and the Vorash entity faced each other across the chamber. The very air between them seemed to warp and twist. 300 years of preparation, the entity hissed, its voice now a harmony of discord that made several representatives collapse in pain. 300 years of weakening this reality's defenses. "You cannot stop what comes." "Maybe not," Marcus said, stepping forward despite every instinct screaming at him to run. "But we can try." The entity's attention turned to him, and Marcus felt the weight of malevolent intelligence that existed partially outside normal spacetime. But he also felt something else. Nixtharian's presence in his mind, shielding him from the worst of the assault. "The humans understand," Nixtharian said, his voice carrying newfound respect. "They see the truth others refuse to acknowledge, that sometimes the only choice is to fight, regardless of the odds." Around the chamber, representatives were beginning to stand again. The shock of revelation was giving way to something else, as a growing awareness that everything they thought they knew about galactic politics had been a carefully orchestrated lie. The Vorash entity began to withdraw, its form becoming less substantial. "This changes nothing. The preparations are complete. When the barriers fall, you will remember why you chose pragmatism over principles." As it faded from view, leaving only the echo of its malevolent presence, Speaker Thrixal's voice filled the sudden silence. "Emergency session is hereby called. All representatives will remain for full security screening. It seems we have much to discuss." Marcus looked up at Nixtharian, seeing determination in those ancient eyes. "The hard part begins now," the dragon said, "convincing 37 species to unite against an enemy they helped create. But perhaps there is hope after all." 3 months after the revelation at the Galactic Council, Marcus found himself standing on the bridge of humanity's first true warship, the Guardian's Oath. Built with a combination of human engineering and knowledge gifted by Nixtharian, the vessel represented something new in galactic politics, a ship designed not for conquest or exploitation, but for protection. The view from the bridge showed a sight that would have been impossible just months before. Ships from 17 different species hung in formation around the massive space station they had constructed in the Kepler Nebula. Not all of the Council species had joined them. Fear and political calculation had kept many neutral, but enough had chosen to stand against the coming darkness. "Sensor sweep complete," reported Lieutenant Kim from the tactical station. "No sign of Vorash infiltration in this sector, but we're detecting the same dimensional distortions on the outer rim that Nixtharian warned us about." Marcus nodded grimly. The barriers between dimensions were weakening faster than even the dragon had predicted. Time was running out. "The enemy accelerates their schedule," Nixtharian's voice whispered in his mind. The dragon was currently in his crystalline chamber aboard the station, interfacing with the massive defensive arrays they had built. "They fear what we might accomplish if given time to prepare properly." How much time do we have? Marcus asked aloud, earning him curious looks from the bridge crew who hadn't yet gotten used to his telepathic conversations. Days, perhaps. The dimensional resonance in the Veil sector is approaching critical instability. Marcus activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Guardian's oath. Prepare for immediate departure to the Veil sector. Operation Threshold is now active. The response was immediate. The diverse fleet began moving with practiced precision, a harmony of different technologies and philosophies united by necessity. The Zalani crystalline cruisers sang their way through space. The Andorian bioships pulsed with living energy. The Terran vessels newest to this dance moved with mechanical determination that spoke of a species that had learned to adapt quickly. Dr. Vasquez appeared on the bridge, her arms full of sensor readings and looking harried. Marcus, we're getting reports from the advanced scouts. The dimensional tiers are bigger than our worst-case scenarios. And there's something else. She activated the main display showing long-range sensor data from the Veil sector. What Marcus saw made his blood run cold. The tiers in space-time weren't random. They formed a pattern, a vast geometric design that stretched across multiple star systems. They're building something, Marcus breathed. A gateway, Nixtharian confirmed, his mental voice heavy with grim understanding. Not just a simple breach, but a permanent doorway between dimensions. If they complete it, the Void Swarm won't need to probe our reality anymore, Marcus finished. They'll be able to pour through in unlimited numbers. Captain Zhang, now commanding the Joint Task Force, appeared on screen from the flagship Unity. Marcus, we're receiving a transmission from the Neutral Council species. They're requesting immediate evacuation assistance for 3 core worlds. Are they finally ready to join the fight? Unclear, but they're definitely ready to run. Marcus felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. When this had all started, he had been a simple engineer trying to solve a mining problem. Now he was somehow one of the leaders of a desperate alliance fighting to save galactic civilization. You underestimate yourself, Nixtharian observed. Leadership is not about rank or appointment. It is about being willing to stand when others falter. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Veil sector, and Marcus felt his heart sink. The dimensional tiers were worse than the sensor readings had indicated. Space itself seemed wounded here, reality bleeding away into chaos, and at the center of it all the Vorash were building their gateway. The structure was massive, larger than most space stations, and clearly organic in design. It pulsed with malevolent energy, drawing power from the dimensional instability around it. Vorash ships swarmed around it like antibodies protecting a vital organ. Tactical analysis, Marcus ordered. 47 Vorash vessels of various configurations, Lieutenant Kim reported. But sir, they're not the biggest problem. The gateway itself is generating some kind of field that's interfering with our weapon systems. The field is attuned to chaos frequency, Nixtharian explained. Conventional weapons will be ineffective. But there is another way. Marcus felt knowledge flooding into his mind, not just information, but understanding. The gateway wasn't just a Vorash construction. It was a hybrid of their technology and something else, something that existed primarily in the spaces between reality. We need to get close to the gateway, Marcus announced. Nixtharian can disrupt it, but only from close range. Through 47 enemy ships, Captain Zhang's skepticism was evident even through the communication delay. Not through. Around. Marcus began issuing orders, coordinating a battle plan that relied on the unique capabilities of each species in their alliance. The Zalani would provide harmonic disruption to confuse Vorash targeting systems. The Andorians would use their bioship's natural resistance to chaos energy to punch through the enemy lines. And the humans, we're going to do what we do best, Marcus said with a grim smile. Improvise. The battle began with the Zalani song ships creating a symphony of interference that made coordinated Vorash response impossible. Under cover of that chaos, the bioships of the Andorian fleet surged forward, their living hulls adapting to enemy fire patterns faster than weapon systems could compensate. But it was the human contribution that turned the tide. While the enemy focused on the conventional assault, Marcus led a small group of ships in a seemingly suicidal attack on the gateway itself. The Vorash let them come, confident that their chaos field would neutralize any threat. They hadn't counted on Guardian knowledge combined with human engineering. Now, Nixtharian said as they approached the gateway, Marcus activated the device they had built together, a resonance generator that didn't fight the chaos field, but instead used it as a carrier wave. The effect was immediate and devastating. The gateway began to collapse in on itself, its hybrid nature making it vulnerable to the very forces it had been designed to channel. Vorash ships converged on their position, desperate to stop what was happening, but it was too late. The gateway imploded with a flash of unlight that briefly turned space inside out. When Marcus's vision cleared, the Vorash fleet was in full retreat. The gateway was gone, and with it, the immediate threat to galactic civilization. But as he watched the enemy ships disappear into hyperspace, Marcus knew this was just the beginning. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Indeed, Nixtharian agreed. But today the galaxy learned something important. That when different species stand together, even the servants of entropy can be defeated. Looking out at the mixed fleet around them, ships that had never fought side by side before today, Marcus allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could survive what was coming. 1 year after the Battle of the Vale Sector, Marcus stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Guardian Academy, watching the first graduating class of multi-species defenders practice their formations in the space above. The sight still filled him with wonder. Beings from across the galaxy working together, united by a purpose greater than any single world or species. The Academy itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Built into a living asteroid that Nixtharian had awakened from its eons-long slumber, it combined the best technologies of 17 different civilizations. Crystal spires grew alongside metal towers, while bioorganic corridors connected, chambers that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The Council officially ratified the new Guardian Accords this morning, Dr. Vasquez announced, as she joined Marcus at the observation window. She wore the insignia of the Academy's head of xenological studies, a position that had been created specifically for her expertise in interspecies cooperation. All 37 species? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. 31, she admitted. But the 6 holdouts are starting to reconsider, especially after the incident in the Rigel system last week. Marcus nodded grimly. The Void Swarm had made 3 more incursion attempts since the destruction of the gateway, each one more sophisticated than the last. The traditional Council response of diplomatic negotiation and strategic withdrawal was proving inadequate against an enemy that sought the complete dissolution of ordered reality. They learned quickly. Nixtharian's voice whispered in his mind. The dragon was currently in the Academy's central chamber, teaching a class of volunteer cadets how to perceive dimensional instability. But so do we. Through their mental link, Marcus could sense the dragon's satisfaction. The new Guardians were everything Nixtharian had hoped for and more. Where the original Guardians had been a single species bound by biology and tradition, these new protectors represented something unprecedented. Conscious choice to defend reality itself. Regardless of origin or physiology. Marcus, you need to see this, Captain Zhang called from the communication center. She had accepted the position of Academy Commandant after the Council officially recognized the Guardian Corps as an independent peacekeeping force. Marcus made his way to the communications hub, where a priority message was waiting from the deep space monitoring stations. The content made his blood run cold. Massive dimensional distortions were appearing throughout the galaxy simultaneously, not the random probes they had grown accustomed to, but coordinated breaches following a pattern that stretched across thousands of light years. It's starting, Marcus said quietly. The real invasion. Within minutes, the Academy was buzzing with activity. Graduated Guardians rushed to their ships while cadets were evacuated to secure facilities deeper in the galaxy. The multi-species fleet that had been training in local space began forming up for what everyone knew would be the battle for galactic survival. Marcus found himself aboard the command ship New Dawn, a vessel that represented the pinnacle of cooperative engineering. Its hull was grown from Zalani crystal but shaped by human metallurgy. Its power systems combined Andorian biotechnology with traditional fusion cores, and at its heart, a chamber where Nixtharian could interface directly with the ship's systems. Sensors are going crazy, reported Commander Tiketh, the Zalani tactical officer. Dimensional breaches opening in 7 sectors simultaneously. Energy readings suggest massive transit events. On the main display, Marcus watched as the galaxy's defensive grid lit up with warnings. The Void Swarm wasn't just probing anymore. They were coming in force. They have learned from our victories, Nixtharian observed. No single gateway this time, but multiple breaches to divide our response. Can we handle 7 simultaneous incursions? Marcus asked. Not with conventional tactics. But the new Guardians are not constrained by convention. Through the ship's communication system, Marcus addressed the assembled fleet. Ships from 18 different species hung in formation around them. Each crew trained in the new Guardian protocols that combined ancient wisdom with cutting-edge cooperation. Today, we face the greatest threat our galaxy has ever known, Marcus began. An enemy that seeks not conquest but the complete destruction of everything we are. They expect us to fragment, to fall back on old patterns of species-specific response. They're wrong. He paused, feeling the weight of history in this moment. We are no longer separate civilizations competing for resources. We are guardians sworn to protect reality itself, and together we are stronger than any force chaos can send against us. The response was immediate. Across the fleet, beings who had never fought alongside each other before began implementing the revolutionary tactical doctrines the Academy had developed. Zelani song ships provided coordination matrices that allowed instant communication between incompatible technologies. Andorian biovessels served as mobile repair platforms that could adapt to any ship design. Human vessels, with their talent for improvisation, filled gaps in formation, and tactics that no single species could have anticipated. But it was Nixtharian who provided the key element that transformed their fleet from a collection of ships into something entirely new. The dragon's consciousness stretched across the entire formation, linking every Guardian through a network of shared purpose and real-time tactical awareness. The first engagement took place in the Centauri sector, where a massive Void Swarm entity was attempting to establish a foothold in normal space. The creature was unlike anything they had faced before. A living fragment of chaos that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Traditional weapons had no effect. Energy beams passed through it without impact. Kinetic projectiles were absorbed into its reality-distorting field. For a moment it seemed unstoppable. Then the Guardians implemented Protocol 7. Working in perfect coordination, the fleet created a resonance web around the entity. Each ship contributed its unique capabilities to a harmony that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. The effect was devastating to something that thrived on chaos and disorder. The Void Swarm entity began to collapse in on itself, unable to maintain coherence in the face of such organized opposition. Within minutes it was gone, leaving only rapidly healing distortions in space-time. 6 more to go, Nixtharian observed with grim satisfaction. The pattern repeated across the galaxy as Guardian fleets engaged Void Swarm entities in sector after sector. Each battle was different, requiring improvisation and adaptation that no single species could have managed alone. But together, united by shared purpose and linked by Guardian protocols, they proved more than a match for their chaotic enemies. By the time the last dimensional breach was sealed, something fundamental had changed in galactic civilization. The old council, with its emphasis on species-specific interests and political maneuvering, had been replaced by something stronger. A true alliance based on shared values rather than convenient treaties. Marcus stood once again on the Academy's observation deck, watching as the combined fleet returned home. But it wasn't just ships he was seeing, it was the future. Young beings from dozens of species working together, learning from each other, growing into something greater than any of them could be alone. The Guardians were always meant to be more than one species, Nixtharian said, materializing beside him in the observation chamber. The dragon had learned to modulate his size to fit humanoid spaces, though he still radiated the power that made reality bend around him. Are we ready for whatever comes next? Marcus asked. No, Nixtharian replied honestly. But readiness was never the point. The willingness to stand together against impossible odds, that is what makes a Guardian. And in that, your species has taught the galaxy something it had forgotten. Marcus smiled, thinking of all the impossible things that had happened since he first broke through into that crystalline chamber. A human engineer freeing an ancient dragon, natural enemies becoming allies, an entire galaxy learning to set aside old grudges in the face of ultimate threat. So what do we do now? Now, Nixtharian said with something that might have been hope. We begin the real work. Building something better than what came before. Something worthy of protecting. Outside the observation window, stars wheeled in their ancient courses, and for the first time in millennia, the galaxy was truly at peace. Not the fragile peace of the old council, built on compromises with evil, but something stronger. The peace that came from beings choosing to stand together against the dark. The age of the new guardians had begun.